What are some of the most challenging and rewarding parts of the product ops role?
Let's start with challenging. I think it's a little bit like herding cats, right? Especially initially. And the biggest challenge, I think, is just sort of understanding what the biggest challenges are and where to start and prioritizing that. You can't do it all at once, right? So I think figuring out what the biggest need is can be challenging. Getting buy-in can be challenging. Helping the other ops, battle of the ops, understand how we all complement each other. That can be challenging at times. I think what's really rewarding is understanding what the potential could be and helping realize that, and really feeling good about the consistency and processes and practices really working and bringing value. So that's I think the most rewarding part. What do you think, Becky?
I think you're right. I think sometimes the product ops or generally ops it's a somewhat of a lonely work. It's very challenging because you're like one level away a little bit from the customers and revenues and everything, and therefore like it's also like a lot of product managers actually can relate to that, which is when everything goes wrong, it's our fault. When everything goes well, it's the team's job, right? So just being able to understand our purpose is to make sure the team's successful, make sure we're building the right product, make sure that we, our metrics going towards the right direction. Because ultimately, that's really what we're trying to do is help everyone to be more successful. So it's both challenging and rewarding at the same time. It's hard to manage. It's the same thing as a product manager, right? In many ways, but we are like even slightly like even wider and a little bit shallower in terms of the touch to the customer. But holistically, I think I definitely seeing in my career when you have great product ops skills, the organization work better, that the cross-functional teams are more aligned, less fighting, less finger pointing, customers have better product you deliver, and you are nimble, being able to change it quickly, because if you're a siloed organization, you can change very quickly. But if you have a more transparent, connected organization through the product ops framework, consistency, then you can see what's going on, be able to change and really drive revenue, drive business forward. So that's the rewarding part of it. You do see metrics get better. You do see your stakeholders just raving it. And you do see that people don't get so frazzled, right? People have confidence because the process and framework will make them aware of what's going on, right? Before that, just you don't know what's happening there. You don't know what could happen. You just like a lot of worries. And now with the product ops and the framework, people feel like, hey, I can sleep at night. I know there's a framework, know what's going on. I'm just in the know and I can trust, right? I think that's the outcome.
That's a good point. That actually reminds me of something else that I've seen a lot of sort of transformation in really setting up R&D allocation tracking. And a lot of times companies are like, we don't need to do that. We don't want our engineers just like marking hours. It's not about that. It's about looking at sort of where the resources have been used. So let's say you've placed a really big product bet on a certain outcome. You go back and look at the allocation, you're like, oh, interesting. Most of our engineers are working on X. And that helps you understand like, oh, all right, what's happening here, that this is the intention, but we're actually getting to this. So that helps, like you said, sort of like help you sleep at night to know that the teams are working on the right things. So. Right.
And you're totally right that, think about the allocation, tie outcome and the product together. And by the way, put a plug into Dragonboat. That's exactly what we built for, right? So when you start to think about your outcomes, think about your product features, and the allocation target and the real actually all tie into one place. And that is so important. Most people don't realize that resourcing is a very important part of enablement. So if you don't tie these two together, that's a big problem. That's where we have problem, right? There are things you want. The reality is different.
Right. Exactly. And it helps not only just sort of identify, intention and the reality, but also if you have been, working on something that is generating a lot of revenue, and you look, and you're like, oh, we've only given it 10% of our resourcing. What would happen if we gave it 15? So it can be just a matter of sort of moving your bets around on the table.
Right.
Yeah.